Hello and welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I'm Bess Hawthorne, and today I am joined by a very special guest. Her name is Valerie Abraham, and she is the youngest daughter of Francis and Donna Fugashon, who have also been on this podcast. She and her husband, Matthew, have been married 10 years. Coming in September is their 10th anniversary, which is very exciting. They have 3 boys and 2 girls, and one with Jesus in heaven. We are going to talk a lot about the hospitality that she does with her family and hear a lot of great tips and advice about our attitude of hospitality. So welcome, Valerie.
Thank you, Bess. Thank you so much for having me. It is such a delight and an honor to be here.
Well, I am so excited you are here. She was born in Canada and grew up in France, moved to the U.S. in her teens, and of course married, and moved to Tennessee with her husband when they were married. So we're going to hear lots of fun things about different cultures coming into her cooking. Her husband is part Egyptian. So we have some France, we have America, we have Egypt, all coming to play in her kitchen, which sounds just absolutely delicious. And seeing that her dad is a French chef, she has inherited a love of French cheese. And she and her husband, it is on sabbatical right now, but at one point they have had a cheese store where they import French cheese and Swiss cheese and what else?
A little bit of English, Italian, kind of depends how the spirit leads on a particular week or if we had particular requests for an event that we were helping cater.
That sounds amazing. And it makes me realize how much cheese there is in the world that I haven't tried. And I do love cheese.
France alone has reportedly, I don't even know if this number is still accurate, but 360 or more varieties. And every country has all of its own entire world of cheese, too.
That is incredible. So at some point in time, they may start that again and continue introducing little Moscow, Idaho to the world of cheese.
It was a very self-indulgent project because we got to get access to all kinds of amazing cheese that we couldn't find in the supermarkets, and we got to share that love of cheese with others. So It was a very fun project.
I can imagine. She also has done a podcast with her sister-in-law, Lydia Fugashon, called Muse and Hearth. It is on sabbatical, but as the little ones grow up a little bit, they're hoping to start it back up again, and I will recommend it highly. I listened to maybe all the episodes a long time ago when they were releasing episodes, and it was just very well done, very good topics. So keep an eye out for that, Muse and Hearth. And what else is there to say about you? I feel like there's so much more. But I'll let you talk. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Valerie.
All right. So we moved back to the Moscow area in, 2022, for my husband to actually strike out on his own. So he is a surgeon by training, general surgery and trauma surgery as well. But he was very fed up with the medical industrial complex as represented by what we like to call the insurance cartel. Mm-hmm. So he and my brother, actually, David Fugashon, teamed up to found Veritas Surgery, which is a multi-specialty surgery group that basically eliminates the middleman, whether that's insurance or government, and puts the power of being the customer back in the hands of the patient to work directly with their providers instead of getting all tied up in the morass that is insurance system that's breaking the medical system right now.
Yes, the very overinflated prices.
Right.
That's funny you mention it. There's lots of people who have gone through Veritas Surgery to have their surgeries. I just met a person at church on Sunday who said that they were in town because her husband had been quoted maybe it was $60,000 for a surgery at the local hospital.
Oh,
but
wow.
They came here to Veritas Surgery because it was a fraction of the cost. A fraction.
Wow.
I was like,
That's
you're
amazing.
in town in Moscow for a surgery? Coming from, I don't know, a bigger city.
I love hearing that.
Yes. Yeah. And it was just, and then another friend, it was a very small quote compared to what you would pay even if you have insurance.
Right.
Because by the time you do your copay and deductible and it's just so expensive, the costs that are passed down when you go through the traditional system. So that's a wonderful model, and I hope it takes off. Did I hear that they were doing something that would expand it across the nation?
So we started in Moscow, but we also provide surgery in, let's see, right now we have Post Falls, and Boise, I think Spokane, and I know there's been talk with some options in Seattle as well. So definitely expanding and growing orthopedics, general surgery. Let's see, spine surgery, I think, is a newer one that was recently added. So a lot of different options. Our goal is to just really empower the patients and the providers to actually work under a free market model instead of the insurance cartels.
Yes.
So it is taking off, keeping Matthew very busy, keeping all of us very busy. And then he also still works part-time at a trauma center in Coeur d'Alene as well.
Wow.
So our schedule, that's one of the things that has been a challenge to figure out with hospitality is working around a schedule that is different basically every single day of the year.
Yes. Well, again, that's an encouragement to people to recognize there's different seasons for hospitality too.
Absolutely.
And to just not have guilt. If your husband is called to what he's doing, a very, very busy schedule, your hospitality would look different than if it's, all the children are grown and we're half retired or something.
Right.
So that's okay. Another really interesting thing I heard about Veritas surgery is if you have a Christian sharing plan, that oftentimes they're willing to work with the surgery center. And because it's so much cheaper for them to pay the bill, they'll pay it in full.
Right.
Instead of, like, say you have a Christian sharing plan and the hospital is charging you $60,000, instead of them trying to reduce the rate and pay a good portion of that, if you get it at Veritas Surgery, say for $20,000, then they'll say, okay, we're paying it in full, no deductible or anything. And it will even fly the people to the place.
Yes. I know that's the case with at least one of the major sharing ministries. I
Maybe
need to
not
double
all.
check the details.
I would say in general, you would have to check with your own sharing plan.
Check with your own sharing
there's
plan.
multiple out there.
But I know that they have been really excited about what they have seen taking place and are very, very eager to make things work and make it easy on the patients to choose dramatically more affordable options like this. And I know that in some settings, Veritas even will provide a meal for the patients when they're recovering so that they have just even details like food taken care of so that they're not just on their own trying to figure out how to recover in what for many of them is a different city than they live in.
That's just an incredible model that's beginning. I just love that idea. And well, I wouldn't say I hope to take advantage of it.
I hope you never need to take advantage of it.
I hope I never need Veritas surgery, but I know it's there in case I do.
Exactly.
Okay, well, moving on, tell us a little bit more about your family and the hospitality that you're doing in this very busy time of life.
Yes, like I was saying, it has looked different in different seasons. Right now, we try to focus our hospitality when we're in town, because sometimes we'll be just completely out of town for Matthew's work, or he'll be out of town. And when he's out of town, we do tend to just hunker down a little more.
You have all 5 children by yourself. I remember what that's like.
And when he is in town, though, we also sometimes will work around existing plans with like Sabbath dinners at my parents'. So one of the fun little ways that we've found recently to work in hospitality on a very just low-key basis is picking a time on Sunday mornings that will fit around the various church services at different churches in our town so that people can come over either before or after their church service and just have coffee, a little pastry or something, and fellowship together.
That's a great idea.
We've really enjoyed it. Just takes a lot of the stress out of hosting a full meal, although we love doing full meals as well. But it just creates this really, really easy kind of a ramp on to hospitality. So I think that's a wonderful way to kind of get the skids greased to get back into hospitality.
And who doesn't love a pastry and coffee on Sunday?
Yes.
I would do that any time of day.
Matthew he's the barista for the house, and he makes very, very good coffees. He has spoiled me so that I don't even like getting coffee out of the house.
I can
usually,
imagine.
Unless it's like one or two really special places.
What do you do when he's gone?
I struggle through with very mediocre coffee that I make for myself.
And then when he comes back, there is great rejoicing.
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing. Does he cook too? Is he a chef in the kitchen?
So we have very different approaches to cooking. I'm the very spontaneous, impulsive cook who just kind of throws things together. I like to cook what we say in French au pif, which means kind of the idea of by the nose, like you're doing it with your senses, you're thinking about what sounds good to put together, using what you have on hand, and improvising.
Skill.
And I need to learn to meal plan more sometimes for the sake of sanity during the week. But I also really love the idea of improvising in the kitchen. It's part of what keeps it a joyful process instead of feeling like just a chore. Matthew, on the other hand, he's the more scientific mind. He will research and go just all the way on a project. So he'll research, the history behind a dish and all the different variations, which recipe will work best, which one has the best reviews, order specialty ingredients sometimes if he's getting really into it. So he'll do the really fun projects, and I just kind of make food happen.
That sounds like a very good balance. It sounds like y'all probably complement each other very well. You're the artiste and he's the scientist, and together magic is created in the kitchen. I tend to be more like him. I once had a sister tell me, you don't have to measure everything. Like, but you kind of do. Like a teaspoon of vanilla in your cookies, you can just pour a little bit and eyeball. I'm like, no, you need the teaspoon. I will say I've gotten better. She would be very proud because I do sometimes just dump and eyeball, and I'm getting
Bravo.
better. But I think bravo for me. I think it does take a lot of creativity and confidence, and I feel like it is a skill because you can dump and it tastes terrible, and you
I have
can
definitely
dump
done
and
that.
it tastes amazing.
I think,
Yeah, yours probably turns out much better than mine when I do the creative approach.
definitely not all the time. I think it's also a cultural thing. In fact, one of the funny things that I've discovered as I have kind of come into my own learning how to cook more is that it's actually really hard sometimes to find actual French recipes, not just recipes from Americans of French cuisine, but true French recipes,
Right?
Because they just don't grow up with recipes as much. So the whole cookbook culture isn't even as much. It's becoming more of a thing, but it isn't even as much of a thing there. Whereas in America, so much of the domestic arts were shaped by, like, starting with, was it Fanny Farmer in the late 19th, early 20th century? She was turning cooking specifically, like very intentionally turning it into a science. And that's, I think, where we get a lot of the standardized measurements, even if I'm digging in the attic of my brain to find that factoid. I believe a lot of it dates back to her standardization of measurements and recipes to equip every American housewife to be able to recreate exactly
the same thing that somebody else made.
Because it's not... Maybe because of immigrant culture where, so many people were leaving behind their roots. We just didn't have the same grandmother lineage to pass on from generation to generation. And then in France, there's just more of that artistic au pif approach. And of course, in Egypt, I think, if anything, even more so, it's
just throw it in the pot.
Exactly. Put enough cumin to taste right. So my dream long term is to combine the best of being a French grand-mère and an Egyptian teta in my cooking. By the time I have grandchildren, I hope to have fulfilled that.
I'm sure you will, and your grandchildren will be just highly blessed. They'll just always want to come to your house to eat. But you may be one of those people that they're like, okay, we're going to have to stand next to her and make her measure. You get a notebook, I'll get the measuring spoon, and when she's about ready to dump, we're going to grab it and measure it and write it down, and you'll make your own cookbook one day. What is your take on hospitality? What would you say to encourage people to practice hospitality in their homes or in their lives? What are your ideas on the philosophy of hospitality?
That is such a good question. I feel like that could...
We could be here a while.
Yes. Someone said, who was it? Of the writing of books, there is no end. And of the writing of books on hospitality, there could be no end. I think my views on hospitality have changed a little bit over the years because when I first got married, well, first of all, I knew how to eat good food. I didn't know how to cook good food. And I thought I knew how to cook good food. So I had a very steep learning curve and a very patient husband.
I want to hear some stories later.
But I also had a very, very formal attitude towards hospitality, which comes from, I think, the French side. Particularly, hospitality tends to be a very, not always, but tends towards being a very formal affair there. And I had to learn that, especially once we started having kids in pretty close succession, that there simply would not be any hospitality if I kept trying to maintain that standard that I had set for myself. Mm-hmm. So over time, I, with Matthew's gentle encouragement and prodding as well, learned to loosen up a lot so that hospitality could be something that we could incorporate into whatever season of life we were in. And, there are some seasons postpartum or, particularly crazy schedule where it just doesn't. Obviously, it's not going to be a big focus. But then there are other seasons where, especially if you are willing to not center your kind of platonic ideal of hospitality the same way, then you can still be hospitable and share food with people, invite them into your home, even if things do feel a little crazy sometimes. So I think, I've learned to be more laid back on even things like house cleaning,
mm-hmm. Yep.
Which sometimes I will even find myself having forgotten something that I do try to still make sure happens before guests come over. And, someone will ask to use the restroom. I'm like, yes, but let me go check
Hold
that
on.
really quickly.
It was done, but maybe that was 24 hours ago.
There have been a lot of kids in and out.
Right. I don't know if you have two restrooms. It was mentioned on here a while back, but I thought it was this genius idea. I think it was maybe somebody recommending it from Tora Whitling who had mentioned it to her. Anyway, they had more than one restroom in the house, which would be required. But once she cleaned the restroom that guests were coming into, she lit a candle. And that told the kids, you can't use this one for the rest of the evening. I want you to use the other one in the master bedroom or whatever,
The one where we've stashed everything.
Yes. And that she knew that would keep it nice for guests coming, and 5 kids, including potty trainers, wouldn't be in and out, and all the toilet paper's gone and there's a mess or toothpaste. Or you just know. Like,
that's
I
brilliant.
should have used that with the kids growing up. I did not do that. So
I love that.
Anyway, that's a great idea.
Yes.
And like you said, just kind of course you want it to be clean, but but sometimes we put a little too much pressure on ourselves to have it just look squeaky clean and perfection when you have 5 children and 5 more are coming over with their parents. Right. I remember a friend once telling me I was just scrubbing and mopping. And we were about to have 15 more people over. She's like, why aren't you doing that before the guests? Do it afterwards. Like, she's kind of right. Mm-hmm. I could sweep it and no one's going to be looking at it like I am. And if it was swept, it would look just as fine as if I did this beautiful,
the whole
elaborate routine of mopping. They all come in 5 minutes, it's undone. And as soon as they leave, I need to redo it. Why am I doing this to myself?
Yes.
So anyway, great advice.
And then also, I think just remembering why you're doing hospitality. I think that one of the foundational principles is just that it's a giving of yourself to others, and it's a giving of the delight in God's creation. Because when you have people over to feast on really good food, whether it's simple food like just some cheese and bread, or whether it's, a 5-course meal, you are affirming the goodness of creation, basically. There's a fascinating book by a German theologian named Josef Pieper, and he really gets into this idea of gratitude and the idea of almost resting in God's creation and celebrating it. That act of gratitude is just one of the most powerful things you can do. I think that's what, I'm sure many of your listeners are familiar with this book already, but Robert Capon, The Supper of the Lamb, he dives into this idea as well. And I think he does such a beautiful job of making sure that we understand hospitality not just as some Gnostic meeting of the minds, but as a chance to just realize what a lavish creation we are surrounded by, whether it's the natural world, but also the world that God has given us to turn into something better, the water into wine. That's what we're doing every time we step into the kitchen and turn these ingredients into this incredible feast that we can put before our guests, and using that food then to realize what a giver of gifts God is. So I think that having that as a presupposition really shapes how we do hospitality, whether we're in a season of needing to keep things simple and just enjoy simple food, or do it a little bit less often, or if we're up for doing something really, really elaborate. I think it can be present in both ends of the spectrum. And I think sometimes as Christians, we want to push back almost a little too hard, like, well, if you're putting a lot of work into it, or if you're making it fancy, then you're entertaining. And that's kind of become a bad word. Mm-hmm. And I understand what they're saying with that, of course, because entertaining represents a I think what is a kind of a carryover from the pagan, like Greco-Roman ideas of hospitality as showmanship, basically. But we can use, it can look the same on the outside. The throwing yourself into something is a way of also giving yourself to the other person.
It can be a gift versus look at me and look at my wealth and look how great I am at whatever.
Exactly. Yes. So just keeping that idea centered of gratitude and sharing that gratitude. I think on the more formal end of the spectrum, a story that captures that so beautifully is Babette's Feast. If you are familiar with that, it's a novella originally, and then it was turned into a movie in the, I think, 80s. And it's one of the only stories I have ever read where I think the movie actually captures the idea better than the book.
Really?
So I would recommend just jumping straight to the movie.
Okay.
For anyone who hasn't seen it,
I was a girl.
Yes.
But it's on my list to watch again.
Oh, it is one that bears a rewatching regularly.
Well, it stood out so much when I was young. I still remember puzzling over the ending.
Yes.
Like I couldn't quite grasp why she did that. Like I understood her motive, but I remember even as a girl thinking, I don't know if I would do that. She should have spent her money on something else.
A ticket back to France.
Right. But then as I grew up, I mean, of course I understand it better, but I've had that thought of I need to rewatch it. I want to rewatch it
it's so good.
So just think through the story.
To sum up, if a spoiler is okay to...
Well, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
if you haven't seen it, then maybe pause, go watch it and come back.
Or, you know what? I can probably even do it without the spoiler, but just the setup is that a famous French chef is exiled from Paris during one of France's many revolutions, alas.
Alas, the history.
Yes. She is exiled during one of the revolutions, and the only place she can come to is basically a friend of a friend. She comes to this very remote, very kind of ascetic, harsh, pietistic community in, I'm blanking, I think it's Denmark. Yeah,
okay.
Northern Denmark. And they live very simply. They started on great principles with their founder, who was a very devout pastor. But over time, they have kind of slipped into the letter of the law without the spirit, without grace, without love for God and for each other. And she spends many years there, very gradually transforms how they eat because they eat in a very ascetic fashion. And at the end of her time, she wins the lottery with a ticket that she had that her nephew had brought her on a boat from France. And so she wins this massive amount of francs. And, of course, the two sisters that she lives with are expecting her to leave right away to get out of this tiny, remote, harsh community on the edge of the North Sea or wherever it is. And she says, I would like to make one meal first. Just let me make you a meal like I used to make at, Le Café Anglais. And she prepares this just incredible feast for them. And then there's a twist after that. So I will leave that part off. So there's no official spoiler, but there's a twist after the meal about the why she did it and how that meal has changed things and what that meal cost her to give them as well. And I think that is just one of the most beautiful stories of hospitality that has ever been written.
And the effect it has on people.
Right. How it changes each of the people who ate it through the process they were resistant to it at first, but the process of delighting in the goodness of God's creation, just the lavishness of what food represents.
And it goes back to your point of it was a gift. So when you think about entertaining and, this was a big cost and it was fancy, it was a gourmet feast, it wasn't about her. It was about what she was giving to her community and the people that she had lived with.
Right. How it changed them and their relationship to God, ultimately.
Yep.
So that's kind of the far end of the spectrum on that side. But also there have been just so many incredible moments of sharing food. I mean, literally, I keep coming back to bread and cheese. There is nothing quite like a solid bread and cheese for just realizing that even the simple things in life are such a gift. Or even being on the receiving end of a meal from someone else, like the simple food that someone brings you after, either a blessing of a baby or a trial that you go through, and the way that shares love with you as the recipient.
Yes. I have a story. I probably mentioned it on here before, but it was a time I was very, very thankful for bread and cheese. I was terribly morning sick and had gone with my mother-in-law to visit some relatives in the backwoods of Arkansas. No food. and
Oh,
just terrible morning sickness. I'm just slumped on this lady, great aunt's couch or something, and she brings in, and of course, food sounds terrible. I don't want anything, but I know if I don't eat, it'll get worse.
Mm-hmm.
She brings in bread and cheese. And it was nothing fancy. In fact, it was probably American cheese. Does that count as cheese?
Americans make some very good
Yes,
cheeses.
Yes. Well, it wasn't cheddar or anything. It was literal American cheese, which is funny that it's called that. I don't even know the history of that. I should look that up sometime.
Cheese product.
But yes, a cheese product and whatever bread she had. And I just remember distinctly recognizing later how thankful I was for her hospitality of just bringing me bread and American cheese, which I did not grow up with. You know, my mom would not have had American cheese in our house. And I was like, I am very thankful for American cheese because I went from laying completely sideways on the couch to slowly sitting up,
coming back
to life, and then asking her for some more bread and cheese. And it was such a wonderful gift. And it is, well, for one, it was just the hospitality, but it is a meal. I remember my grandson coming over this past week too. And after he ate some bites of something that I had and he was a little picky, I knew he wasn't full. So I got out bread and cheese and we ate bread and cheese while we played. So serving that to company, it reminds me of like a French picnic or something.
Yes. French picnics are wonderful.
Yes.
They often, so as Americans, you know, we tend to eat on the road, and I have done that so much since when we've had to do road trips.
Don't tell your dad.
I know, don't tell my dad. But growing up, you know, driving on the French highways, you'll see families pulled over. They don't eat while they drive. They pull over. There are picnic tables at every rest stop where you're expected to just set up a full picnic. Wine included often.
That is amazing. What goes with the bread and cheese, by the way? Wine and what else?
Wine, pickles, cold cuts, saucisson, which is like French salami. You could do like a terrine. That's something that isn't as common in the U.S., but it's basically, if you're familiar with the idea of a pate, it's like a slightly more complex pate that has different things in it. And a little bit of salad maybe. A classic would be carotte râpée, which is a grated carrot salad with vinaigrette. And there's nothing better on a hot summer day, especially if you have a French car with inadequate air conditioning, than, you know, a bottle of rosé, cold carotte râpée, baguette, and a good camembert or something. The French love camembert so much that a lot of other European countries call them les camemberts, the camemberts. It's very similar to a brie cheese. But
I feel like a bucket list item is now going on a French picnic. I need this in my life.
Someday we'll meet up there.
But having that as your hospitality, that sounds simple, kind of, you know, we can have this ready to put out on a tray.
Right.
That sounds like...
Not even made by you necessarily.
Right.
It's usually, you know, the bakery, the traiteur would make the terrine. It's just stuff that you pick up. But,
yeah, that's a great idea.
But you're sharing it together and having that moment of respite from the world to just taste and see that the Lord is good.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. That reminds me of charcuterie boards for Americans.
Similar, very similar idea.
But yours would taste even better. She's got some of those cheeses on there. We'll be right back after a quick message from today's sponsors. Are you searching for hands-on activities to help your kids explore the practical side of science? Look no further than your kitchen. Inquisicook blends food science and culinary arts into an engaging program that puts delicious food on the family table. Let Inquisicook do the teaching with lesson videos, reliable recipes, and assessment tools that put students on track for success. Their online platform is easy to navigate and optimized for mobile, so the learning experience can move from the classroom to the kitchen without a hitch. Inquisicook turns curious students into intuitive cooks, not just recipe followers. Say goodbye to the tyranny of the ingredients list and say hello to utilizing what's in season, what's on sale, or what's in the fridge. Visit inquisicook.com to view sample lessons, then check out the recipe gallery to see just how crave-worthy science can be. Be a time traveler. Sail the seas with Odysseus, escape prison with Edmond Dantes, and defend the innocent with Ivanhoe. Join us at timetravelersLiterature.com. Enter a whole world of story where books uncover the riches of other books, where you discuss classic stories with other homeschool students, and where you are the time traveler, appreciating the work in its own literary tradition, its time in history, and its culture. Find out more and enroll in courses at timetravelersLiterature.com. Okay, so what else?
I think we've really enjoyed kind of stretching our wings on hospitality for larger groups in the last couple years, because occasionally we'll have my whole family over. And when we have everyone over, my parents, I don't know how they do it. I mean, they do it so often, but occasionally they'll let us do it too. They'll take a break. And when we have everyone over, it is over 30 people.
Wow.
And lots of little kids.
Do you try to do all the food, or do people bring things?
I think usually people will contribute stuff, but I mean, it depends. There's been times where we've done so I'll usually do like the main dish. We've actually done the menu that I'm going to mention today more than once. It's one of my favorite go-tos for a large crowd, and it scales really easily. And we just, we get out a folding table or two, and often I don't even have enough silverware to go around. We'll have to kind of supplement with plastic cutlery, maybe even some paper plates. I always forget water glasses. I don't know why. I cannot bring myself to remember water glasses. So often I'll be scrounging at the last second to add water glasses. And one of my favorite tips, I'm getting ahead of myself, but I just realized I forgot to even make note of this ahead of time, is for large gatherings, you can just buy a bolt of fabric from the fabric store and use that as your tablecloth. That way you can stretch it across multiple tables that are lined up. And I think before Joann's closed, our local Joann's fabric store closed, but I went and got a couple different fabrics. So I had 2 different options on hand, and it still adds up because these days even fabric is expensive.
That's true.
Compared to fast fashion. So just buying your own, right, is still a bit. But also I think I've heard of people finding fabric at thrift stores. Oh. So that would be another place to try.
Well, and then it looks like one long table versus you've tried to use 2 or 3 tablecloths and you see an end or tucked down between tables, which is fine, but that's a neat idea to use fabric.
So even if things are as cobbled together as our table usually is, with those missing water glasses and the plastic cutlery mixed in, just having that tablecloth is a really fun, unifying aesthetic touch. And I think just overall, one thing I have realized over the years is that hospitality really is a muscle. So the first time you do it, the first times you do it, it will be so much harder. And that's normal. That's not a bad sign. That means that muscle is getting a workout and it's sore. And over time, it does become a little easier. I'm hoping it will get easier for us as time goes on as well. It's still, it is a big energy output.
It is.
But it is something that once you decide that this is something you want to work on, this is the muscle. You're training to run a 5K, and so you just keep chipping away at it. Starting small, just doing things here and there. One thing, if you sign up to bring people meals, that's a great kind of way to practice hospitality, even if you can't host a group in the moment. And then, like I was mentioning earlier, coffee hour between church services is a really good way to just kind of practice the motions of having people come into your home and share food and drink.
Both of those are great ideas because you're really just doing the bulk of one thing.
Right.
Like with the meal train, you're learning how to do time management, get a meal to a house hot and on time.
That's still my biggest struggle.
Yes.
Very bad at time management.
Because usually on the sign up, it'll say between 5:30 and 6, and that's a window, but a small one.
Right.
But your house can be just blitzed. Your kitchen can be blitzed. You can come back and there's dishes piled everywhere. And of course, the table's not set. The house doesn't have to be totally cleaned. But you can learn that. You can learn how to prep ahead, how to make a meal plan, how to make a complete meal. And then on the other side, you're like with your coffee hour, you're preparing your house, you're preparing for company, but you're not having to do a whole meal. So I love that as an introduction where at some point, you'll feel confident enough to pull it all together. Yes. And okay, now we do have a full meal and our house is clean and tables are set and.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing that comes to mind is just this is still such a lifelong learning process, I think, of sanctification, but remembering that hospitality starts first and foremost to your own family. And I think that's such a temptation for us as moms and wives especially, is to serve the others both literally and metaphorically before we are serving our family. And I think my parents did such a good job of that growing up. And I'm so grateful to stand on their shoulders there because they practiced hospitality so much, but they always made sure that it wasn't coming at the expense of our needs. Obviously, you know, the whole family can stretch and push and do hard things together. And so it's kind of this tension that you have to hold of, this is a hard thing and we can lean into it and do it. But also, am I, in my desire to go and serve my neighbor down the road, am I costing my family something that I shouldn't be taking away from them? Am I still available to them? Am I loving them first and foremost? So
that's a great point. Great encouragement. This is slightly off point, but that reminded me of sometimes when I do baked goods.
Yes.
I'll want to take it to a neighbor or a friend, or when we have our Sunday dinner, I'll send some home with the adult kids that come over. And my youngest, who's actually about to move out, sadly, there
New
will be many
stage.
tears.
Yes.
But I know it's the best thing for him to grow and spread his wings. But it's so funny because I've realized with him, he'll say, "Are you giving all those away?" "You're not giving all the muffins away, are you, Mom?"
Surely there's one extra.
Yeah. So it's just kind of a funny reminder of like, you know, it really is important to him that whenever I am making something fun and, well, I think it's fun to make and give to whoever else, that I'm first thinking of him. And so I try to always have some on the counter for breakfast, but you know, there's a bag in the freezer too for the week coming up or next week or whatever. There's plenty for you and we're sharing.
Yes. That's such a good concrete metaphor for the idea, I think.
So it's a little bit different than what you were saying, but it does remind me like it's important for me to let him and my husband know like you're actually thought of first. I'm not just thinking of other people. I'm thinking about you. Did you have some books you wanted to share with us on hospitality that we all should read?
I did. I can't stop myself from recommending books to people ever.
I love books and I love recommendations, so go for it.
In fact, we had friends over this weekend who we haven't seen in a very long time, and they stayed overnight, and the next morning, a large part of the conversation was just talking about book recommendations back and forth.
I always have a note on my phone because I lose lists.
Yes.
I mean, I just... maybe they're in a drawer and I just don't pull them up. But if I have a note on my phone, if I finish a book, because I do listen to audiobooks too, if I'm doing dishes or something like that, then I'll have an idea of like, oh yeah, so-and-so recommended that. And that'll be my next find.
So the 3 books that I thought of as kind of a foundational trinity of books that I think would bless every husband or wife doing hospitality on a both practical note and a more theoretical note, but of course, as we all know, theology comes out your fingertips. So it will have practical implications. The first one is called, well, we already talked about this a little bit, The Supper of the Lamb, a culinary reflection. It's by Robert Farrar Capon, and it has shaped, I think, my ideas of hospitality and just food itself and the sacramental nature of the world, like the way that God loves us through tangible things, not just through these theoretical ideas. It has shaped so much of our family's perspective on that. And then on a more practical note, there is a cookbook / philosophy of how to cook called An Everlasting Meal, Cooking with Economy and Grace by Tamar Adler. And she is not a Christian at all, as far as I know, but she just has the most beautiful writing style, the most beautiful way of making food and the process of cooking come alive. You can't help but see the poetry of making a soup from a leftover chicken carcass when you read her book. And she also just gives such a good perspective. Like, even if you don't follow her particular applications or recipes, she teaches you how to think about using up odds and ends or using unusual ingredients in new ways, you know, how just the principles behind a little parsley and cilantro and vinegar can come together, and garlic to make would that be like salsa verde or something, and how that can dress up a meat. And so it just kind of gives you this set of tools that you can apply to whatever ingredients you're working with or the different styles of cooking that you might enjoy. So I really love her book, An Everlasting Meal. And then the last book I turn to this all the time, especially when I am trying to improvise. And I think it's such a good tool, especially if you are newer to trying to improvise in the kitchen and want to find something that can give you sort of some guidelines so that you're not just totally shooting in the dark trying to figure out what goes with what. It's called the Flavor Bible. And it is basically a massive dictionary of ingredients. And for every ingredient, they list this incredible, seemingly almost exhaustive list of all of the flavors that pair well with that ingredient. So you can figure out combinations of those ingredients under the master ingredient. So if you're starting with, for example, well, this weekend we ended up with apricots on hand from the farmer's market. And so you could look at that, the apricot heading, and it will tell you information, all the different flavors, but also which cooking techniques work well with apricots. So it might, you might discover, for example, that apricots work really well as a stewed fruit, as a cooked fruit. And then looking at the flavors, you might discover that rosemary and almond go really well with apricot. And then from there, you could build a recipe off of that, make an apricot crisp using those ingredients or something. So it enables you to both build your own ideas about cooking with flavors and also to adapt recipes. Mm-hmm. So if you are following a recipe, but you want to tweak something and you're just not quite sure, like, can I add this? Will this actually go? Or am I going to ruin the entire recipe? Then it's a great resource to just look it up and be like, okay, yes. Okay. Not only is it in the book for that ingredient, but it will also say like certain ingredients will be bold under a heading to show you that it's not just an okay pairing, but like a really good pairing.
Wow. So, and it's the Flavor Bible. Who is it written by again?
It is written by Karen Page and Andrew Dornenberg.
Okay.
They wrote a book on wine pairing as well, What to Drink with What You Eat. So they are masters of flavor.
That sounds wonderful, especially for developing that ability, that confidence to adapt or create your own recipes. That would be very fun. I have to get this in my kitchen. I've never heard of that. I do not have that. The other two I've heard of. Mm-hmm. Have you at all looked at the Everlasting Meal cookbook that came out?
I have that cookbook as well. It's particularly focused on leftovers, I think. So similarly, almost like a dictionary, you look up the ingredient you have left over, and then she gives you ideas of what to do with it.
I see.
And sometimes it's really, really random. Like, I'm trying to think what some of the examples I've seen in there, 2 pickles left over. Well, you could chop them up and do
just
do
eat
this
them.
And that. Yes. No. Or a lot of the ingredients I'm thinking, yes, just eat it as is. Leftover ramen, right?
No, but that's a great idea to have a list where you're like, I don't know what to do with the leftover apricot jam or something. And then some ideas of what Mike could
over a cake or pie. Oh, if you warm it up and then use it as a glaze.
A glaze. Okay. See, we just need to have Valerie write a book. A continuation. I feel like now that you have this trinity of books that you probably have a book inside you to kind of just bring it all together.
First, I should figure out if I can ever even reproduce the same recipe twice.
She's that kind of cook. She's going to be that kind of cook that her grandchildren are following her with a notebook and pen and measuring cups and trying to write down how she does it. Because I'm sure you are a fabulous cook. But yes, recreating your recipes is another thing. So hopefully what you're going to tell us today, we can recreate.
Sounds good. This is from a real recipe, not just Valerie poking around in the kitchen.
Which would be equally delightful. Well, tell us a favorite menu that you might serve when you're having people over.
So this menu, I have done some form of it for a pretty long time. It was one of our first favorite recipes after we got married. It's from the cookbook Smitten Kitchen. She's a pretty popular cookbook author, so I'm sure many listeners will have heard of her. The Smitten Kitchen Everyday Cookbook, and she has a recipe for what she calls street cart chicken. And basically, it's a little bit similar to like a chicken shawarma. It's often sold, as the name would indicate, in street carts. Some people call it halal chicken. I like the name street cart chicken for obvious reasons. And it's this very festive dish, but it's easy to scale up for a crowd. It tends to be fairly allergy friendly as well, which is really nice when you're serving people where you don't know their needs as much, depending on what you serve it with. So it's a spiced chicken with, cumin and paprika and oregano and coriander, all these just warm, wonderful spices. And she has you cook it on the stove. My shortcut tip when scaling up is to just do it in the oven and not even turn the stove on for this step. Just cook it on high heat. I think 425 to 450 for, depending on how many trays you have squeezed into your oven, anywhere from like 30 to 40 minutes probably, but I also usually forget to set timers. So along with not measuring ingredients, it gets a little touch and go.
Do you use an oven thermometer to
I do.
beep so you know when it's done and not
so
overcooked?
not a thermometer in the oven, but I use a, what's it called? Thermopin, one of those instant read thermometers where you just poke it into the meat.
Okay.
Because one of my phobias is making my guests sick. So I am always trying to make sure that the chicken is actually thoroughly cooked, which is why I love using chicken thighs for this recipe, because you can't dry them out, even if you overcook it out of a phobia of salmonella.
Right. When you kill your chicken again.
Yes, exactly. Twice dead chicken is the best. And then you serve it with a turmeric and cumin rice that is just so flavorful and brightly colored. So it has a lot of just visual appeal as well. And then you have just chopped vegetables on the side, like almost like a classic Greek salad, but you don't even dress them actually. You don't do a dressing with it. So you have shredded lettuce and chopped tomatoes, and I usually add cucumber. I think her recipe calls for red onion as well. And then you do a basic yogurt sauce, kind of like a Middle Eastern yogurt sauce. And I do tend to tweak that a little bit as well, put a little garlic in. Maybe a little bit of lemon juice as well. And that just kind of goes over all of it. And then, let's see. So you have rice. I usually serve it with pita too, which helps just kind of fill in the corners, especially with hungry kids at the table. But that way you have a gluten-free option and the gluten option. So you can stuff a pita or just eat it over the rice, eat it with the salad. The white sauce goes over everything. And then if possible, I think she calls for harissa. She has kind of her own little variation on harissa sauce. I like to just put a jar of straight harissa out. Most groceries, well, depends on the grocery store. It can be a little bit trickier to find. I just found one that I absolutely love that you have to order from Amazon. In fact, I tried to order it to be delivered in time for the last large group that we served this to, and it arrived that night, right afterwards.
No.
But if you don't have harissa, you could just do any hot sauce, just that little something to give a zing and a kick.
Okay, well, I'll have to get your link, and that way we can order it ahead of time before making this meal.
It's really good. It's not too, it has a kick for sure, but it's not over the top spicy like some harissas can be.
I know how to judge harissa sauces. So knowing that you like that one and recommend it, and that's the one to order, I would like that.
Yes, highly recommend if I can find the link still to it. But yeah, that ends up being just a really fun menu to serve because it's, again, it scales well. It's appealing. It's not super spicy or anything, so it's appealing to everyone, but it still feels a little bit out of the ordinary. Like it's not just an everyday meal either. So it feels festive. You know, you have all the platters of rice and chicken and vegetables out and the pitas. And I usually just do store-bought pita unless I really have time and want to get into the full process or enlist Matthew to make pita or something.
Right.
But it is a fun way to bring just a tiny bit of his heritage. It's not uniquely Egyptian or anything, but it definitely represents the broader Middle Eastern culinary culture.
A lot of those same spices, I would imagine, would be how Egyptians cook.
For sure. Oh, and lots of garlic. Of course, it has lots of garlic in it.
Added garlic.
Yes. Garlic is probably garlic and cumin are like the two prevalent flavors of Egyptian cuisine.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh, and tomatoes. They do a lot of like tomato braised dishes, but yeah, it's still working on my Egyptian culinary chops.
I'm sure you've come a long way. This absolutely sounds delicious. Do you serve anything at the end, a dessert of some sort?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, good. A woman after my own heart.
This is an area where I do love when people contribute so often. Like when we've hosted family, often sisters will bring a dessert to contribute as well. So that way I don't have to. I've scaled up the main dish, but I don't have to scale up the dessert as well. So I'll just do a single recipe. And I have kind of two ideas. I couldn't quite settle on which one.
Options are always good.
Options. There we go. So the fail-proof, just way easier than it should be recipe that I've discovered over the last couple years maybe is a Basque cheesecake. I have never even made a traditional New York cheesecake or anything in my life.
Okay.
But I discovered a Basque cheesecake, and it is, as far as I know, it's impossible to really mess up. It tastes amazing, and it is so easy. You just put the ingredients in a food processor, bake it in the oven at a very high temperature, and it is supposed to get black on top. It's supposed to have a kind of charred finish. So you can overbake it, but it is actually supposed to look.
It handles the high heat.
It handles the high heat, exactly. And it's fantastic written as is. It's a recipe. The recipe I use is from King Arthur Baking, which I love using their recipes because they're well vetted, they're well tested, and they're just so reliable.
Mm-hmm.
And when I make the base recipe, I will add a little lemon zest or orange zest and vanilla. And I'll just say 1.5 teaspoons vanilla. We'll just go with that number, but I don't.
I would measure it. She dumps it in.
I do dump it in. I don't think you can ever have too much vanilla. That's part of my problem. So we go through a lot of vanilla. We've started making our own extract because
that's delicious.
We use so much of it. And then especially with the street cart chicken, I have enjoyed toying around with variations. So one variation recently that, again, it's enough of a subtle tweak that it doesn't require reworking the recipe or anything, but you add a splash of rose water to the batter before you put it in the oven, a pretty generous splash. And I'm sorry for that. All I have is a splash. If I had to guess, I would say 2 tablespoons.
Okay.
And I can't remember if I did zest, at least rose water though. And then just pile strawberries and either toasted pine nuts or toasted almonds on top. And it pairs really well because rose water and orange blossom water are like the 2 dessert flavors in Middle Eastern cuisine. So it feels like a kind of continuation of the theme of the meal, but also with a very straightforward dessert, very classic American dessert. I mean, Basque, so it's from Spain technically, but it's still very similar to an American cheesecake as well.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And strawberries on top of both, whichever version you do. You always do strawberries on
I don't
top?
always do strawberries, but I did it with the rose water because strawberry and rose water go really well together.
Did you discover this in the Flavor Bible?
I probably did at some point.
Or do you just know this?
I'm sure it came out of the Flavor Bible at some point in the distant past.
That's a good tip to know. I mean, in the Basque cheesecake being so easy to make, do you make it the night before? Is it a cold cheesecake? Or
It's
do you
best
make it
served
the day
cold
of?
for sure.
Okay.
That's another thing that's nice about this whole menu is that all of it can be made well ahead. Or if you have time, you can do it right up to the minute. And I've done it enough times right up to the minute where I'm starting to learn my lesson and actually force myself, even though I am horrible at planning ahead, to make a part of it ahead. So even just doing something like the marinade the day before takes a lot of stress out of throwing it together because technically it only needs 30 minutes of marinade for the chicken. But if you're like me and tend to plan last minute, like, 30 minutes, so I'll do it the morning of, it always ends up being a lot more stress than I anticipate.
You're adding that to the 10 other things that need to be done the morning of.
Exactly. Half of which I've forgotten until the last minute. So
Yes. Okay, so you said a couple of different versions of that cheesecake. Were you saying that you also had another dessert?
Yes. So to go kind of the next level with keeping the theme of the meal, Matthew, I actually don't usually make this one. This is Matthew's specialty, which is in keeping with his background, but there's a very classic Egyptian dessert called basbousa, and it's a semolina cake with a syrup that is soaked into it after baking, so the actual dough is basically unsweetened, I think, but it's kind of a yogurt cake. And this is one that over time he's found a recipe that he really likes that is pretty reliable. Last time he made it, he even used butter instead of ghee. The traditional recipe calls for ghee, which is used instead of butter in the Middle East. And, he's even made it with butter. He's made it with different kinds of yogurt. If you use Greek yogurt, you do need to thin it a little bit with some water till it's like more of a traditional thin yogurt consistency. And the flavors there, it almost surprises me how much it seems to appeal to people because it is a little bit different than traditional Western fare, but it is so, so good. It goes really well with coffee. And actually, speaking of coffee, the other thing that we often do is bring out dates after the meal to serve with coffee. I was going to save this for my tip, so I guess we're going into the tip now.
That's okay. Tips sprinkled throughout are the best.
But I love trying, this doesn't always happen by any means, but when I have the forethought to do it, and remember, I love serving just a little something with the coffee at the end of the meal. In France, this is actually a formal course often. It won't usually be listed on the menu, but it's kind of expected with a more formal meal at a restaurant. It's called mignardise. And it's, it might be, in France, it might be a chocolate or a little, almost like a petit four, like a little confection of some sort, or a pâte de fruits, which is like a fruit dessert. And they bring it out with or even after, I think, the coffee. And it's just that little extra touch of hospitality at the end of the meal, kind of like you didn't ask for this, but we're going to bring it to you anyway. And to kind of blend our two cultures, we do that with dates. We like using different varieties of dates as well. So it's a fun opportunity to kind of talk about dates that people might have never tried before, because I was looking this up recently. I think there are over 200 different varieties of dates in the world.
Wow.
And until I married Matthew, all I knew was Mejdul dates.
Right. Dates in America that you find at every store.
Right. And I didn't even think I liked dates very much because of just what we usually use. And then I started discovering this incredible variety. There's ones that are softer, some that are more chewy, some that are kind of a fruitier flavor, some that have a very honey flavor or caramel flavor. So there's just all these different varieties.
Okay, where do you find this sort of thing?
Let's see. We've had a couple different sources over the years because Matthew's dad, my father-in-law, is, of course, the master of finding. That's one of the ways that he shows hospitality and generosity to people, is that he loves sharing food with people and sending them his favorites. So he sent us, I think it started with him sending us some boxes of dates, and then we kind of found the farm through that. There might be a more recent one that we've discovered, but I think originally it was the one we started with was called Oasis Dates. Oasis Date Garden, maybe. I think they're in California. And you can get the other option that I can't remember the name of was also from California. And so many different varieties.
That's such a fun idea. Do you serve it with dessert and coffee, or would it be after dessert?
I would just serve it whenever coffee comes out, which often we'll kind of be eating dessert. Then Matthew will start making coffees for everyone because he usually does espresso-based drinks. So it's going to kind of take a while to rotate through the table as he does all the lattes or Americanos. And once the coffee starts coming out, it's probably some sort of sensory cue in my mind. I'll smell the coffee and remember.
Dates.
Yes.
We need dates on the table.
Yes, dates to pass around.
That is such an interesting idea. It reminds me of my discovery of olives. So I grew up and you just saw the black olives in the store, or green
olives. The ones
olives.
on pizza, yes.
And years ago now they have more olives in the store. And maybe they did back then and I did not know about them. But as a young adult, I remember going to Dallas. They had a store there called Central Market. You saw this just bar that stretched for days and days, it seemed, all these different variety of olives. And I thought, what in the world? I thought there were black and green. And I didn't really prefer olives. I don't really love the black olives.
Yes, agreed.
But then I discovered Kalamata and some others, Anyway, that reminds me of what you're talking about with dates.
Yes.
Just all of a sudden, this world has opened up of food I didn't even know existed.
New
which
flavor
would
horizons.
Be incredible and a fun gift to your company. So, great idea. Thanks for listening to this episode. This is just part 1 of our conversation, and we're only getting started. In the next episode, we'll pick up right where we left off. Be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast so part 2 is waiting for you as soon as it drops. Until next time, bye for now.